Kyle, this is actually a home game for you. We're continuing our series on the awards, and we're talking about Rookie of the Year this week. So as, the Ringer's you're basically the Ringer's young player correspondent. You doing some great college basketball content over on the site with Tate Fraser on that podcast, and you're just kind of the guy that's paying attention to all the players that are freshly out of college. So this is going to be a Kyle heavy episode. I'm really looking forward to your takes. I'm putting the pressure on early, and I hope that you appreciate that too, because isn't that what it is to be the Rookie of the Year, to have all the pressure put on you early?
Yeah, I suppose so. I'm definitely, I like to sort of like walk that line between guys who's coming to the NBA and who just got to the NBA, because I think it's an interesting thing to evaluate players when they're younger, sort of set what we think, or like a lot of times erroneously, or like fail at doing this, at like setting what their trajectories are as players, what we expect from them, what we expect them to be doing based on things that we've seen in the past. And then once they get into the league and sort of assess, we evaluate them when they're 15, 16, 17, 18, and then we do it again. And then we, once they get into the league, we assess whether we were really right or really wrong. And in some cases, we kind of discover like, oh, we were like off on that.
Well, you get to live in a good world, and this is a fun world for me to live into because it's all amorphous. And what we do is we project all of our hopes about what we hope a player can be, what they can be to a franchise, onto them at a very young age. And sometimes it pans out and sometimes it doesn't. But with the Rookie of the Year award, one thing that's interesting is that it pans out more often than not. Like, Banchero is my Rookie of the Year, but if you ask me who I think is going to have the best career, I would say Jalen Williams.
Oh, okay. You should write this. This is a good take. That's interesting. Magic fans, what do you think about that? That's an interesting take. I don't know. Like, in terms of, I think what you're saying is, and I think this is interesting. What you're saying, I think, is that like he is starting strong, but you think that his ceiling, based on like maybe the path that he's on as like a primary who's eventually going to have to develop into an efficient scorer and sort of create those releases in his game, that you're maybe less confident about his ability to hit that tippy top. You tell me if I'm right or wrong. Hit that tippy top ceiling, as opposed to the track that Jalen's on, which is secondary creator, evolves into maybe a little bit of a hybrid between secondary and primary. You're more confident about his ability to develop into that than you are like Paolo to hit the top ceiling. Is that what you're saying ultimately?
Yeah, ultimately, I think it speaks more to my confidence in Williams than it is a knock on Banchero.
On the Paolo thing, I think he's deserving. I definitely think he's deserving. He's had a great year. I think he's looked comfortable throughout the year. A lot of that too is just physically, his physicality helped him. It's going to be interesting to see. He just has one of those frames that like I could see him he could become one of the more kind of punishing players in that like mid-range area, just because of how well he can kind of get to the rim. And I definitely think, I worry though about the mid-range shooting too. I'm not as totally sure. I guess the real question that we should ask here is in relation to this next guy that's on the list. And that's Jalen Williams, who's a guy that I was a big fan of coming out of Santa Clara. I told you I've got to find a way to stop like taking these players that I'm a big fan of and still somehow underestimating them. Jalen Williams was a guy who the Thunder apparently reportedly were on all year, that he was their guy that they really wanted badly, aside from Chet. Williams had sort of a rough start to the year in terms of shooting it. He, over the course of the year, his last 10 games, actually, he's been putting up almost 20 points per game, 5.1 assists, 6 rebounds, but he's been hitting 46.4% from three, which matched up more with what we saw from him in college. He was a 44.3% catch and shooter from Santa Clara next year. I think this is a guy, I said this at our live show in Salt Lake City. Seerat, I really, really think this guy could make like a significant leap from like ages 22 to 23. He's getting ready to turn 22 years old. What do you think about like the Bane developmental trajectory as a way to sort of create your expectations for Jalen Williams?
Ooh, that's interesting. So, I mean, I get where you're coming from in terms of being an older guy who has, come in, and maybe we don't necessarily assume that he will improve in the same way that I think Mikal Bridges talked about this on JJ Redick's podcast of like, hey, I'm still going to get better. Just because I'm not 19 coming into the NBA doesn't mean that I'm not going to improve. And I think that there is a similarity there. But man, like Jalen Williams' ceiling and his athleticism and what he's shown us in terms of, the flashes of superstar potential are way higher than I think we've seen in Bane or Mikal or any of those guys. I think incremental improvement is something that is important. That's the road that those types of players almost have to go down because of some of their physical limitations, right? Just like when it comes to athleticism with Bane, I think one thing that unfortunately it's the reason that he went as low in the draft as he did, but will unfortunately impact his ceiling is his wingspan. As much as he works on his finishing moves, I think he's going to be a guy that's always going to struggle to get above that 60% from the restricted area range, right? Where he's going to be great in all these other areas. And I think Mikal is similar too, where I'm not sure you are going to see him be the type of guy that can put pressure on the rim no matter how good he gets, because that is just a natural limitation. I think like for the most it makes sense, right? Like the rim is a place that everybody else is trying to protect. So unless you are an overpowering dominant force, it is going to be hard for you to get a lot of volume and efficiency in that area. And you look at Williams on the other hand, right? Like he is shooting 70% from the restricted area this season. And that's also where a majority of his attempts are coming from. Like he has been very, very paint bound. And it's almost the opposite of the Banchero situation when you talk about discernment. And it's something that you have to, it's something where you have to assess Banchero a little bit more fairly, in my opinion, as a result of that. But you also got to give Williams a ton of credit for being intelligent and being able to pick his spots. Like this is a guy who has not built out his mid-range game yet, and he's going to need to. And there are signs in both his like fluidity of his shot that show you that he can do that. But at the same time, he's not there yet. And you know what? Less than 5% of his attempts come from the mid-range area. And over the last 20 games, 20% of his points are coming from the free throw area. So he's putting a ton of pressure on the rim, and that's what he should be doing. And he's a great cutter. He's obviously just like, he's got the 7'2" wingspan, the athleticism, and just a ton of moves around the rim. His footwork is really good as well. He's got some good counters, and he knows how to score down there, right? So he can do it consistently. But he's also like, he's not the number one, or he's recently kind of the number 2 option. For a lot of the season, he wasn't really even the number 3 option on the Thunder. So it kind of makes sense that his numbers have been what they are. They're going to be lower than Paolo's, but when you see what he's doing as of late and the progress that he's made, especially as a shooter, he's shooting 44% above the break in the last 15 games. You have to also consider in his shooting efficiency, the easiest 3 in the game is not one that he takes a lot. He's just not taking a lot of corner threes at all. And that's interesting because when you're building up your shooting range, I feel like that is kind of a natural shot to be starting with. It's a place that he also finds himself in like a reasonable amount, but I also think his tendency is to cut when he's in the corner. Yeah. But it's just not a shot that he shoots a lot. So he is kind of he's more perimeter bound too, right? Like you'll find him handling the ball from that area. So it makes sense that a lot of his 3-pointers come from that area. But it also, it speaks well to his ability to, become a really good shooter.
Yeah, I think that's probably why, though, like what you said. Like I think the fact that he is like a second side creator, like if he's not involved in the action and handling it, if he's in the corner, he's probably more likely going to be cutting. And I think that makes sense. And if he's above the break, this season, he is 1.48 points per possession as a cutter, which is 85th percentile. He's, like you said, he's 77th percentile as a finisher at the rim. I do think that the star thing has been a development over the second half of this season. I think at Summer League, we saw him attacking the rim. We were like, okay, all right. And then over the course of this year, if he starts to get that dynamic, the rim pressure is the thing that has been the most surprising to me over the course of the season. Like you said, if the 3-point shooting comes around, which I kind of think it does, I do think he still needs to speed it up and get a little more fluid with it. His makes look weirder to me sometimes than they did in college. That could be the length of the line. Some of them are like not as clean. He's like, rattling them in, things like that. These are like stupid shit that I pay attention to. But I think over the course, I feel some promise about it. Like I feel some optimism about it, and I do think that the mid-range game stuff is going to get there. I don't know if he'll ever get to to the level of being like a primary heavy load creator because he's playing with one. But he balances Shea in a really nice way.